Hello everyone and welcome to an episode of... Fuck! Welcome to an episode of Science Me where I react to certain science videos. There's a reason I've been not watching Sabine Hassenfeld, whatever. There's a reason I've stopped watching her videos. But then I realize I need to react so that people are properly understanding things, just like what this guy does. He talks about not this one, this guy, him, with this stuff about the. Okay. One is cute and the other one is cute and does science, and then one is a. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm just gonna put that into my history and forget to remember about that later. I am talking about portals.
If your initial velocity is high enough.
Okay, so this video disgusts me. It's gross. Let's find out why.
Portals don't exist, unfortunately. But if they did exist, the science would be very interesting. In the video game Portals, you have a gun that lets you shoot portals on even surfaces. It's always a pair. One is orange, the other blue. Anything that goes into one portal comes out of the other.
Not just any even surfaces, you have to have, apparently in the lore, you have to have some kind of portal, activant? Stuff they dropped from the moon, because, moon, right? We're going back to the moon, right? So, portals! Moon! Right? Moving on.
It comes out in the direction that the second opening is facing, and with the same speed as it went into the other direction.
I've only seen 4 minutes of this video.
Portals came out in 2007, so it's fair to say that I'm somewhat late to the game, but I think not enough has been said about how real portals could work. Take this change of direction when something goes into one portal that way and comes out that way. How is that compatible with momentum conservation?
It's called, when you go into the portal dimension, the place that you're going into is a 0 point. There is literally no distance apparently between where you are here and where you are there. Like, literally, you end up from here to the moon in an instant. Do you move at light speed? I don't know, but...
And what happens if I make one portal in the ceiling and one in the floor and jump in? Do I accelerate infinitely? Where does...
Obviously, no one would assume you accelerate infinitely. What you would assume is all the other stuff that has to do with the air in the room and blah, 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 blah. You go on that tangent for a minute, and then you'd realize, I already made a comment on this video, -1 mark for ignoring terminal velocity, an object effect even in infinite space is still, if only affected by gravity, will have a set maximum speed. Once you start moving, you can't go any faster unless you change, like, your aerodynamics or your weight. Or if you propel yourself. This is the only way to do it. So, if only gravity is affecting you, you change nothing else about yourself, you won't accelerate infinitely. No one would believe that or assume that, because terminal velocity is an understood thing. However, we go on with that for another 3 minutes, so...
The energy come from? Have I built a perpetuum mobile? Can we use portals to explain dark matter? And finally, why are portals flat? Inquiring minds want to know, and I promise there'll be cake at the end. To understand how the physics of portals works, it helps to know that portals are basically wormholes, but without the wormhole. You see, a wormhole connects two distant places with a short path. That's...
A portal is a wormhole? The only thing is, you're assuming that the wormhole takes physical space. It doesn't. Wormholes are literally taking 2 points, squishing them together so that they meet at the same point. I.e., the whole paper idea. You take one end of the paper, and you take the other end of the paper, put it together, thing goes through it, boom. You go, there's no distance between the two. That's what a wormhole is conceptually. How do you fail at this?
The wormhole. It's often depicted like this. Without the wormhole, you'd have to go all the way around here. But if you go through the wormhole, that's much shorter. For a portal...
There is no reason for there to be a distance inside the wormhole. None. Conceptually, that's exactly how it works. Where does this space and how does it work and whatever with the warping and the blah 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 is bullshit. It will never work. But if it did work, it would be like expanding an area of space and then contracting it and expanding it again. You start on one side, you end up on the other, in the middle, move a tiny bit, end up on the other side. But that has to do with a lot of actual bending of actual space-time. Regular portals in the Portal game don't do this. They've just bypassed that entire bending thing entirely and just say there are two connected points.
The length of the wormhole is 0. You go in one end and come out the other side immediately. This
is exactly... Portals... Okay, listen, wormholes can be there is no distance between the thing. So...
helps make sense of portals because wormholes are compatible with Einstein's theories of space and time. Alright, we don't...
Theories. Just because you could imagine that you fold space and time doesn't mean you can physically make it a reality. Because you have to actually physically fold space and time.
Know how to make one, and if we did, we probably wouldn't be shooting them from guns, or would we? Well, my point is that wormholes are consistent with the laws of nature that we know, so they can help us make...
If you were to do anything other than shoot something with a gun, you gotta ask yourself, how are you making the portals end up on a surface in the first place? And the answer is, there is a whatever quantum blah blah in the one portal, and a quantum duplicate or entangled in the other portal packet. And so one goes here and the other goes there. Everyone says that it's orange and blue. Actually, it's never orange and blue. It's just one color. But these portals are coded so that you know which one you did first. These are all duplicates of the same particle. You have many of each of them, and in fact, every time the portal gun is used, you're making a new pair. The original are still intact with their entanglement, and you send one to the one place where you want to send and make the entanglement weirdness happen, and the other to the other side, sing sparks with the wall, blah blah blah. That's how that usually is assumed to possibly work. Who cares?
Sense of portals. That said, let's look at the first problem. Suppose I make a portal in the ceiling above me and one in the floor next to me, and I jump into the portal in the floor. What will happen? If I go by the logic of the video game,
I'm a senior product marketer at Google, and I'm going to help you get a job.
I don't care about your product!
by the logic of the video game, what I'd expect is that after I jump in, I come out at the ceiling with the velocity that I fell in. Then I'll accelerate, because gravity and all, and fall through the floor portal with a larger velocity.
You never accelerate due to gravity! You normalize! Gravity is just the planet moving towards us. So, you have to remember that blah 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 blah, stuff is, everything's spinning, everything's moving through the orbit of the sun and the orbit of the galaxy, everything's all moving. Portals that don't move would never exist, but the point is that they are relative to where you want them to be, stationary. So if the object that you put them on were to move, for some reason would break it, but it wouldn't actually. It's just bad coding for the game and logic for the game. Never mind.
Next round, I accelerate more and then even more, and soon enough I'll be moving pretty much with the speed of light.
Don't say that! Don't be stupid enough to say that! It doesn't do that in the game. It would never do that in real life. Just like I said, terminal velocity, I was already pissed off at you because you misquoted a basic physics function. How do you do that? Saying the statement you would accelerate to the speed of light due to regular gravity with no other form of acceleration or regular pull on you or effect of your motion. Gravity isn't an accelerant. It's just a momentum that you are like constantly moving towards. So once you start moving, you go to terminal velocity, the space basically repeats, and you just keep going terminal velocity. Forget about the atmosphere for a second.
Even better, I could pour water into the portal that would self-accelerate.
I mean, yes, but at the same time, you would still need to have the energy in the portal gun or whatever else that makes this thing do whatever it's doing, which is probably... I'm gonna say it probably is finite, but I mean... Yeah, if you could make a bunch of stuff and a bunch of water and a bunch of whatever, you might end up getting to be the amount of energy that you put into the portal gun in the first place, and people would make that argument. But I mean, if you want to go that route, that's something. I wouldn't be moving water. You know why? There's heavier shit to move.
And I could drive a turbine with that energy from nothing indefinitely and totally carbon neutral. You can do this in the game, and here's what happens. You get a loop that repeats. Basically, you don't accelerate if you fall. That, of course, isn't compatible with the physics in our actual universe. Yes, I do understand why they did it this way. It's a game. It doesn't have to be realistic. It has to...
No, terminal velocity is realistic, and you're dumb.
Be fun, I get it, but I'm not here for the fun.
Okay, I'm not gonna say you're dumb. I'm gonna say... No, it's not that you're dumb. You have to be deliberate at this point, is what the other guy would also say. Because, like, you gotta know this. You can't not know this. I'm sorry, you can't just say your physics and what blah, and you don't know this. Like, how? How can you be a science communicator and say this? Are your fact checkers checking this? I don't know how much sarcasm you're putting into this, but I'm not reading it correctly because you're actually saying stuff like light speed. And
I'm a physicist. I want to know how to make it work. Let's start with the problem that in the game gravity doesn't accelerate you as you fall. If you did accelerate, that would create...
of course gravity doesn't accelerate you as you fall. You're moving towards the planet. There is no faster motion that you can achieve. Planet, you, motion, it happens. It's not accelerant. Ew.
energy out of nothing. To avoid that, you need to adjust the kinetic energy of whatever goes through the portal to reflect the change in gravitational energy. And indeed, this is what you'd expect if the two portals were connected by a wormhole. To see this, let's draw a wormhole in here. If you want to come out up here, you'll have to work against the pull of gravity, and that'll slow you down. This is...
I don't want to look at you right now. Okay. Sideways portals. When referring to basic objects, gravity is flat. There's no assistance or negation of the forces of gravity. You're just simply moving as if you're walking through a window. Pretend it's a window. The only difference is the space you're walking into isn't directly next to you. It's anywhere else in the room. There's no difference between a window and a portal. Okay? The space you enter when you go into a portal is extra dimensional. You don't have to work against gravity to do any of that. What would happen, however, is that, again, atmosphere, we'll get to that.
Still the case if the length of the wormhole is 0. So this means if you jump into the portal in the floor and your velocity isn't large enough, you won't come out in the ceiling.
You're disgusting me with your fake facts! Ew! 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 No! Who the... Okay. Yeah, let me explain something to you. Once you're on the top, stuff, you and whatever is gonna go down. What is this pull that's pulling you back up? What is this? What is this? What kind of force is pulling you up? Everything says go downward. What is pulling you up right now? In this up and down motion that you made in the animation. What is that? What is that? That goes beyond I'm going to accelerate faster than I would to absolute lunacy. Because you're assuming there's like some kind of gravity within the wormhole? There isn't?
If your initial velocity is high enough, you'll come out at the ceiling slower, then accelerate and fall in again with the same velocity that you started from. So that'll form a closed loop, as you see in the game, if you neglect air friction. Because if you take into account air friction, you'll slow down and eventually get stuck oscillating around.
Called terminal velocity, air friction is considered. Please shut up.
The portal again. So I'd say that the game gets it partly right. You do get a closed loop, but the first jump wouldn't get you all the way up to the ceiling because your kinetic energy wasn't high enough to get you there. I'll make a little...
No. You consider both points to be connected by a zero space What the actual? No. Stop it.
To here and tell you why I was interested in portals about 15 years ago or so.
As part of our required test protocol, we will not monitor the next test chamber. You will be entirely on your own. Good luck.
Did you know you made a video about portals ages ago? I'm gonna slap you. Because not only are you miscommunicating it now somehow in your accelerated debunkery. Oh my god, sorry. I watched the guy and he said debunk so much that he got like Google debunker as the gobbledygookly debunker.
Suppose you have two portals at different altitudes and you're up here, just coming out of the upper one. What's the gravitational pull that you feel? Is it the one that goes through the portal or the one from in front of the portal? Well, the obvious answer is both. There are two contributions, one that comes...
Why would they be different? Depending on in relative to the room in the example, just that alone, why would they be different? Again, gravity when you I don't even want to get into it.
Through the portal behind you that connects to the floor, and the other one from in front of you that has the floor further away. Depending on which side of the portal you are and how far away you are, one of them is stronger. But to get the entire gravitational pull, you have to add up all the directions. That way, it'd physically make sense. This also means, however, that if you're up there, the gravitational pull will be a bit larger than you expect it to be, because in the direction through the portal,
if you're gonna have an example of gravity being different, don't use a room as your example. Say that you are maybe a portal here and another portal 1,000 miles up or something, where there might be a difference. Also, as you go further and further from the planet, the gravity becomes less, not more.
the Earth is much closer. So what these portals do is that they're a bit larger than you expect it to be, because in the direction through the portal, the Earth is much closer. So what these portals do is...
Yeah. I'm not addressing that.
That they effectively redistribute the gravitational attraction of matter. And that's why I was interested in them, because I was wondering whether you could explain dark matter with that. Not with big portals, we'd have noticed those, but what if they're tiny, so tiny that not even elementary particles can go through?
I thought you were going to go entangled particles, but you went dark matter, and I'm still bothered that people don't believe in the ether. And they say that electromagnetism has to do with photons. I don't know about you, but regular photons of light and electromagnetic spectrum are still subject to the electromagnetic fields and everything. Like, it's not... You could think of it as maybe an excitation in the electromagnetic field, but a photon itself is still a particle. It's still something. Like an electron. There is substance there.
But no matter how small, they'll leak gravity. Let's call them microportals. To get an effect like dark matter from these microportals, you wouldn't...
Okay, I know that the proper terminology would be probably something like femtoportals or something, because no one understands the scale of anything, so micro might as well apply, because we maybe understand that number, but we have talked about femtoseconds recently. If you're going to talk about something the size of dark matter, please use the correct... We don't care if it's something we don't understand. Use the correct words. It's like femto or picoseconds. Not freaking micro.
Need additional matter. It's just that the gravitational pull of the existing matter would be elsewhere, basically. You could then postulate that the gravitational pull of, say, our planet is actually much larger than we observe. It's just that we don't measure all of it nearby because some of it leaks into the...
Interesting that you mentioned that. The gravitational pull of our planet is enough that we're messing with Jupiter. Uh-huh. And Jupiter is messing with us. Jupiter is nowhere near us. Jupiter is messing with us. Just like the sun is messing with us. But you have to understand, we are also messing with the sun. There's the duality of the both of them. It reaches really far. It's not just the moon. We touch the sun with our gravity, as well as it touches us. There's a mutual thing happening there. The entire universe, the entire solar system, I should say, has a center of orbit which everything and all of its poles gather together, and it's slightly away from the sun. We don't orbit around the sun, apparently. We orbit around the collection of all of our mass.
Tiny portals and comes out in the outer region of our galaxy. And then out there, the gravitational pull would be stronger than expected, as if there was dark matter there.
I'm going to ignore that. I'm just going to ignore it. I'm going to ignore
And
it.
yes, you can make that work. The problem is that you'll have to assume that these microportals are in the right places in just the right amounts, and that ultimately explains nothing. Indeed, it's even worse than dark matter, because with dark matter, at least you can calculate how it's supposed to move. With the microportals, all...
Okay, dark matter and dark energy, blah, it's the same thing. It's called electromagnetism. What you don't understand is that literally you have a planet that is so electromagnetic that we have lightning all around the planet and we have an energy field around the planet. That's how much electromagnetism this planet has. It's a giant plasma ball in space. So... like, it's fascinating that the plasma ball simulates exactly how the planet looks on a micro. It's very small compared to the planet, of course. Scale. Who cares? The point is, there's also electromagnetic stuff happening in space. That's how you get electric comets. They're moving, and their weird motion, even though you would expect them to be not really affecting anything, electromagnetism is everywhere in space, and so you do have electric comets that crackle with energy just because they're moving against, well, I guess there's also solar winds and stuff, but
bets are off. If you wanted it to be a useful theory, you need to know where the microportals come from and how they behave. So that's...
if you're talking about dark matter, dark energy, stuff that is the size of atoms that is also taking the area of everywhere. It's just extremely tiny, and it's everywhere. It's like a soup. Which, I mean, could it be portals? Maybe. Who cares? It's like, if you go into electromagnetism, you're literally working with a fluid. You can't, I don't think of it as, like electromagnetism in and of itself, the magnets and electrons themselves have electromagnetism. Electrons aren't flowing photons through themselves. The stuff of electromagnetism is smaller than photons. People have to get on my level with that, because they don't have the sophistication of my level when it comes to just how tiny electromagnetism really is. And again, it's not that electrons are making electromagnetism around them. They are simply pumps moving the electromagnetism that is everywhere. It is the soup that we are all in. So obviously, if there is stuff that moves around and has fields, has effects, has eddy currents, the electromagnetism soup also is moving, also is pulled, so we can understand that there's going to be eddy currents, there's going to be stuff moving along with it. That's why galaxies are able to spin as much as they do, and all hold together as much as they do. They're also electromagnetically held together. But imagine that the farthest star is still affecting the center of the galaxy. What?
Why I didn't write a paper about it. But hey, maybe it's a good topic for your PhD thesis. Okay, alright, so maybe portals don't explain dark matter. But hey, we solved the energy conservation problem, didn't we? What's with the momentum conservation? Momentum is mass times velocity, and that needs to be conserved. It's holy scripture, basically. The universe quite literally falls apart without it. You better make it work. Assuming that...
Look at atoms. They are constantly having electrons orbit them all the time, and the strong forces there binding them together, and that is just constant perpetual motion due to basic fundamental ways that matter can flow its matter and energy. It literally... It's weird that they say about the speed of light and whatever else. Light can only push through the electromagnetic field as fast as it has the energy to push. Once it gets beyond that point and trying to go faster, light itself can't do that because, of course, it doesn't have the ability to accelerate itself. It just has a certain amount of strength. It's just like you. You can only pull yourself up a ladder so much unless you start, bench pressing or something. Or get a jetpack. That's the point. Once you have the jetpack, you can go way faster up the ladder. You don't even need the ladder. Just go whoop, and you're up there. Same with light. You can go faster than light speed. You're welcome.
Portals don't change anything about mass. Momentum conservation would mean that the velocity shouldn't change as you go through the portal, neither the direction nor the magnitude. But in the game, the direction does change. You can see this here with this orange ball that needs to go from this sender to this receiver. You solve this puzzle by putting the portal openings in the right places.
Yeah, it goes from being sideways to going straight up and down. You could say that, yeah, whatever face it was facing and heading in, that's the direction it's gonna go if it's regular momentum. And then as it comes out the other side, wow, it keeps going in that same direction it was going because it had the momentum to keep going in that direction. Huh?
Fun,
That's a
yes,
normal interaction.
but this isn't about fun. The physicist
That's a normal
demands to
interaction.
know whatever happened to momentum conservation. Well, we can ask again how it did
haven't
work
talked
with
about
the
the atmosphere.
wormhole. You can see from this drawing that wormholes indeed seem to be able to redirect objects that go through. This isn't just
Stop having just the room. Like I say, there was a portal on the floor and another portal on the moon.
generally the case. It depends on the mass of the wormhole. Yes, wormholes usually have mass or energy because you need something to create this curved space in the first place. Wormholes are actually quite similar to black holes. And what happens if you throw a ball just past a black hole? It comes back. This is also how swing-by maneuvers work, and those don't violate momentum conservation.
I mean, we can also do that with, like, the moon. Gravity assist. It's a thing.
What happens instead is that you transfer momentum from the big, massive object to the small one. It's just that the effect on the big object is so tiny you don't notice it. This tells us that to fix momentum conservation with the portals, all you need to do is to assume that they're actually very heavy. If you jump through, they do move a tiny little bit, and that preserves momentum, but you don't see it.
Okay, I'm disturbed.
And I just know you would. How the momentum divides itself up onto the two portals? Easy enough. Just assume that they both have the same mass, then they should each have 1/2 of it. If they're so heavy, how can I produce them with this little gun? Let's not go there.
Spectacular. You appear to understand how a portal affects forward momentum, or to be more precise, how it does not.
Having figured out momentum conservation, then
in
also allows us to answer the question of what happens if a portal moves towards you or falls onto you instead of you walking into the portal. In the video game, you can't put the portals on moving surfaces. You have to walk into them.
They did that in... At this point, you could have easily just looked up that exact thing, which you probably did and just are not referencing, because basically you end up in this weird psychedelic flat space, which would crush you.
But clearly physics should have an answer to what happens, right? Of course it does. If you go into the portal with some velocity, we can take the velocity...
Okay. Planet's always moving towards you. Towards a direction. If the portal's on the ground and you're stepping over it, you're gonna fall into it. Obvious. If it's on its side, again, it's like a window. You're just gonna end up on wherever the other side is. Something.
Vector apart into its projection into 3 directions of space. The one is orthogonal to the surface of the portal. And since luckily the portals aren't round but oval, we have a shorter direction and a longer one. So all we need to do is break down the ingoing velocity into these 3 directions and then attach them to the surface of the other portal, and that gives you the new velocity.
Imagine in the extra dimensional area that the portals are being entered into, which is a 0 point because it's based in a quantum entanglement particle. You start at one point, you end up on the other side at the other point. No distance, virtually no distance traveled. It's not no distance, there's still the event horizon itself, which is like, there's something there. What's holding it together? Good question. The energy that, like, the portal gun being able to make a portal on the moon, there's an interesting phenomenon about how long it took to shoot a portal towards the moon. And eventually it did go ding! So it's like, is this a light speed cannon? Because that's when the portals actually connected and then started doing things. You haven't seen Portal 2, have you?
That still leaves us a 180-degree ambiguity. It could happen basically that you come out upside down. To fix that problem, we'll have to designate one side of the portal as up. But once we've done that, we can address the question of what happens if you have a portal that falls onto you while you are standing still. How do you come out?
Pretend this ball is the object. This is the room you're going through. You can go through this way and end up coming out that way. You could go up here through a jump plate and end up coming out that way. You can also go from this side and end up coming out that way. There's a bunch of ways you can do it.
Of the other portal. That depends on whether the other portal is moving relative to you. If it's moving the same way as the first portal, you come out not moving relative to your original place. This is because it's the same situation as if the portal sits still and you move into one. But if the second portal is moving relative to the first, for example because it's sitting still while the first isn't,
0 points, so no distance is actually traveled.
Then you add your ingoing velocity to the relative one. So we've got it all sorted out. Well, except for one thing, which is that wormhole entries aren't flat surfaces. You see, this illustration for wormholes shows a wormhole in a two-dimensional space. The real universe, I assure you, is three-dimensional. If you have any doubts about it, you might have been watching a little too much YouTube.
You know, the paper analogy is very two-dimensional, only folding the paper, right? That's the whole thing about that. So,
To interpret this illustration correctly, you have to consider beings that live in this two-dimensional space. They can't travel through the wormhole like this. They have to go like this. A self-connection of a three-dimensional space that have to go through a fourth dimension, and that is kind of difficult to draw. But a wormhole entry in a three-dimensional space would not be a flat disk. It would be a three-dimensional object, a sphere.
Portals don't have to be a sphere, like freaking Terminator. They don't. There's Jumper, where it was a flat thing, and do you know why it's flat? It's because all you end up doing when you make a portal is you slice through reality into an extra dimensional and come out the other side. So you're either like heading to hyperspace or whatever else, go into ghost realm or an extra type of like frequency dimension. And I love the idea of one energy frequency versus another. That's a very good thing. But anyhow, no, there's no reason why a portal has to be three-dimensional. None. There is that. No, not just because I love the game and whatever else. Simply because in reality, you're making a cut in reality. Like normally, a portal could just be a slice. It doesn't have to have two dimensionals even. It can just be a simple ribbon, and somehow your whole being goes through this ribbon without changing you into a spaghetti monster, and somehow goes out the other side of the ribbon. This is a thing that happens. Like most people think about portals as being discs or being just like a window or something. And that's not just because it works in video games. It's also because like the confinement of a portal would have to begin somewhere, and then it would have to exit into the other space. Like if you looked at it from one direction, right? You might not even see anything be different, and then you look at it from the other direction and you see the actual face of the portal. And you might see what's on the other side, for example. A spherical portal, the reason why it's not conceptualized as spherical is because besides the fact that you would be entering into the sphere at multiple like slices or whatever, and that's not exactly good for the anything's experience. Just imagine shining a light towards one of these balls. It just gets spread everywhere. Let's not have that happen to you.
Or some deformation of a sphere. Yes, that's very similar to a black hole. And indeed, mathematically, wormholes are closely related to black holes. Why did we end up drawing portals as flat openings and surfaces? I believe it's because the idea came from stories in which doors open into other worlds, or
the paper example, where it's just a flat and you go through the fucking...
mirrors show parallel universes. But these two ideas are actually very easy to reconcile. All you need to do is squash the sphere until it's a pancake, and there you go. In case you came to the conclusion that this wasn't all that difficult and portals might well be real, it gets nasty when you try to figure out when a portal opens. Because then you'll have to be...
Terminator uses round portals. Or it uses round areas that then transcend into a different time. It's because you encapsulate whatever it is you're trying to move, and then the same bubble shows up somewhere else, and you come out of that area. Time portals need to be three-dimensional if you're using them like, again, if you're using them like a capsule that starts here and then is moved over there. It's very much like a capsule in that sense, instead of being like jump in. I mean, they could be, but that isn't how the system works for that or whatever. I feel it was a lot of convoluted. I don't want to listen to the rest of the video. And I'm disturbed that you did not contemplate terminal velocity. I'm disturbed that you didn't mention atmosphere. Like, come on. You didn't. I paid attention. You didn't mention atmosphere at all.
Very, very careful to not run into time travel paradoxes. But that's another story and shall be told another time, because by now most of you are probably safely asleep. Yes, I have wondered.
I'm not asleep. I'm very. I took a freaking melatonin at 4 a.m. and I'm wide awake, which is stupid. I have to work in an hour. Anyway, it has definitely wore off. But the point is, sleep did not. There wasn't a lot of sleep that happened. Yet I'm awake. Yet I'm groggy. Yet I need to eat my sandwich. Yet you didn't talk about atmosphere. Okay, let's, for the sake of everyone else at home, what happened with the atmosphere? Well, fluid dynamics tells us that whatever fluid is at the bottom near the portal on the floor is going to be sucked through into the other side. And whatever that direction is will make a blow if it's in this direction. And then that will start making a cycle. And it could regulate, but it won't. It'll make a constant cycle. Unless the rooms are isolated from each other and have a certain amount of pressure, right? And if the portals are both on the floor, then they equal out. If the portal is on the floor and the other portal is up, then there's an unequal pressure and it's going to cycle. It's going to have whatever, some amount of pressure from the down is going to try flowing into the other room. And so atmosphere is going to drop into the other room to a certain amount of pressure, and then it'll have there's no more air that can flow in. So the original room is going to be like low atmosphere, and the other room is going to be high atmosphere. And then it'll stop. Unless it's an open room and they're both in the same room, and then it's just going to make a vortex. The vortex is going to be flowing from the A portal to the B portal in the room. And it's not going to be fun for anyone. It's going to be like the East Australian current that flows underwater. Only it's going to be air at hurricane speeds in a room, isolated. Thankfully. Then you put it out into an open room, and then you have a lot more air to work with. And that's all going to get sucked out and pulled and dragged into the portal vortex, which is again between portals A and B, relative to the surfaces you place them on. Like if you place them one over there and one on the floor or one on the ceiling, either way, there's a distance difference whatever, and gravity is going to do its thing and pull it, and it's going to make a suck, and that suck's going to suck everything towards it. It's going to then make a tunnel that's constant and a flow that is constant and whatever. But yeah, that's how atmospheres work. And the first thing when you talked about water, you don't have to use water when doing that. Where the fuck did it happen? How early was it when you talked about the water? I don't give a shit. You talked about so much, and you stayed on things very minimalist. I can't find where your water is at. The point that you mentioned in the game that it goes to terminal velocity and then that doesn't happen in reality is annoying. It does. Fuck, I'm done. I've said enough. Goodbye. You have a failing grade. Oh. What is it? -2 marks? How many marks did you miss? -1 for the terminal velocity, -2 for lack of atmosphere, -3 for the portals moving, because that is irrelevant. It's only the atmosphere that is affected by the portals moving. That's barely going to do anything. It's like a small breeze, depending on the speed of the portal. Faster, if the portal's moving pretty fast, then it's like, yeah, wind's gonna move. Also, again, atmosphere. So, -3 points so far for that. Is there anything else I'm missing? The sideways to something interaction based on the velocity of the stuff. If everything, like if it's an empty room, okay, no atmosphere, whatever, that object moving from one portal on the side to the other thing, that's how it would work. So, but we're just again ignoring atmosphere stuff, which would affect the ball and stuff. Kind of weird. All portals move differently to each other because the planet is spinning, and a portal on like the low end near the center of the planet is going to move even by a few meters. Is going to move at a different rate through the whole solar system and whatever than a portal that's higher up or lower down. So, yeah. Why do oh, wait, -4 points, portals do not become spheres. Why? It is a cut into an extra dimensional space. Technically three-dimensional. Technically, it doesn't. I might be an arm. Everyone's an armchair. Don't get yourself confused. Everyone is an armchair scientist, especially people who use the same diagram or room to represent different altitude portals. Like, yeah, there is a difference between the one and the other. Even those two portals that are both on the side, the gravity of the one is pulling down. It's still going to want to flow through and make some kind of binding between the portals. Like, the higher part of here isn't going to enjoy being able to go to the lower part of here, but the atmosphere might just regulate. I don't know. I don't remember. Should have stopped while I was ahead. Anyway, I gotta eat my sandwich before I go to work. Bye!